important thing was that it brought me a huge amount of readers. The movie itself was not that good. It was a bad adaptation of the book, or a poor adaptation of the book, and it didn't make any money. But even with all that going against it, they put Clint Eastwood's scowling face on the cover of a paperback, put it out there, and it was a New York Times bestseller for 8 weeks. and you know, the egotist in me says those people who saw the movie and read the book found a better experience in the reading. They found a better story, and they stayed with me. And almost everywhere I go, when I do something like this, someone will come through and say, I discovered you after the movie. So for that reason alone, I can't really complain about the movie, even though I just did. Yep.
Your character Harry Bosch, is he a compilation of homicide detectives you wrote about when you were writing for the LA Times? And also, if they were to make one of the movies now starring Harry Bosch, who would you pick to play his role?
Harry is, yes, definitely a conglomeration of a lot of real cops I knew and a whole lot of fictional influences. Cops that are in books, movies, TVs. You know, that's the writer's job, to take what works for you, take it a little bit here, there, and wherever, and find a way of making it unique or making it your own. And so, yeah, literally hundreds of influences went into, you know, the creation of Harry Bosch. And as far as who would play him, remember what I said, I started writing about him in 1989. There was, whoever the movie stars were back in 1989 are not who are around now. So I've never kind of looked up from my imagination of who this guy is to look at anyone in Hollywood. There's no one in Hollywood that I see as Harry Bosch. It doesn't mean it wouldn't happen. I mean, if as soon as Russell Crowe says he wants to be Harry Bosch, I'll say exactly like I pictured him. But yeah, I write like I read. I like to create in my head when I read a book. I don't ascribe something I'm reading to a well-known figure or someone in my life. I'd like to build out of whole cloth, and that's the way I write it. And so I have built Harry Bosch in my head, and I've been writing about him for 20 years. So my physical view of Harry Bosch is rock solid. It can't be changed, and no matter who they cast, if they ever cast, it won't meet my expectations. But that's, you know, that's Hollywood. Yeah.
Dashiell Hammett in the Maltese Falcon lays out a code for the Sam Spade character about good and evil and right and wrong that I see a lot in Harry Bosch. I'm just curious whether you happen to have ever read that and whether it happened to have influenced you in your writing.
Yeah, I read it. I mean, everyone who's doing what I'm doing should read Dashiell Hammett. Dashiell Hammett didn't put hooks into me the way Raymond Chandler did. Raymond Chandler is definitely the most influential writer on me. The big three were Raymond Chandler, Ross MacDonald, and the man back here, Joseph Wambaugh. And I tried to take from all three of their characters and their works. And Joe wrote about cops with badges. These other guys wrote private eyes, and I tried to construct a character who would have a badge but feel like a private eye, feel like an outsider. The overriding phrase I had when I was writing that first book was an outsider with an insider's job. And so I was kind of distilling what I liked and loved in all three of those writers. And, you know, so Hammett was somebody I read at that point. Before I read him actually before I found Chandler. But for some reason, maybe it was the period of time that he was writing in, it didn't hook into me like these other three writers. But, you know, everyone kind of takes from them the idea that following a code and trying to remain true to it. And, you know, whether Hammett was the originator of that or somebody else, it's certainly something that I hope is in Harry Bosch.
Writing in real time has some problems sometimes. Technology changes so fast, world changes fast. Do you find that something that keeps you up with writing, or have you been able to keep up with all the changes that are going on?
No, I mean, you're right. I don't know if you could hear that. She was talking about the speed of technology and how it's hard to be very contemporary. And it's not only technology, it's just life. And, you know, so luckily with the way they print and publish books, they can do it pretty quick. I mean, I wrote, The Scarecrow came out in May, and a significant newspaper in our country, the Rocky Mountain News, closed at the last day of February, and that's in my book. So in less than, it happened, so this book was, I think, published May 6th, and so it had significant news in the subject matter of the book that was only 2 months old, and that's because of the way, because of technology and how they produce books now. So I can get pretty close to things, but you're never always perfectly contemporary. If you read Nine Dragons, part of the story is about the police department moving from their old police station to the new one. That's really happening in real life. And I got assurances from people all the way up to the police chief that they would be moved in by September. Well, and so it's in the book that they moved in September. Well, here we are, end of October, and they're not in yet. So that's real fiction, people. You know, but yeah, things change. I mean, I really think that it's such a contemporary, disposable society that I'm really writing. I'm not writing hoping people will read my books in 10 years. I'm writing for people to be reading right now and next year, kind of when they're published in hardback and paperback. Hopefully they are of relevance, but some of my books are already obsolete. My book, The Poet, published in 1996. One of the ways they track the killer is because digital cameras are so rare. And here we are, you know, only 13 years later, and who doesn't have a digital camera? So, but I can't worry about that. I can't worry about whether something's contemporary, will feel contemporary in 4 or 5 years. I'm really writing for right now.
Well, we all have our own favorite book, and thank you for writing to last year, because I was running out of books to read. So, which one's your favorite?
You know, it's hard to pick a favorite. You know, I think whatever we do in life, we should get better at it as we go along. So I think my more recent books are more accomplished in terms of writing. I have a really nostalgic favorite, which was how I always answer this question, and that's The Last Coyote, which is my 4th book. So hopefully it's not my best book, but it's my favorite because that was the first book I wrote as a full-time writer. I had been able to quit my newspaper job and concentrate fully on my fiction. So it was a real wonderful year, and I could also see my writing improve because I didn't have to put it down every day and go to the newspaper and write something else. I had my full, undivided focus, and it was just a great year. It was also the year of the O.J. Simpson saga, or the start of it, and which changed journalism for good. And I can still remember being in my writing room and watching the white Bronco chase, and when he finally gave up and he was in the house, there was a big cloud of reporters, and the guy who took my place was in that crowd. And I was so thankful. I was here writing a novel, and he was there. And so those kind of memories have made me think of that book as my favorite. It's also a very important Harry Bosch story. Probably, you know, on a personal level to Harry Bosch, Nine Dragons, The Last Coyote, and Lost Land are the 3 most important books. Yep.
Do you choose the voice on your audiobooks?
No, I don't. She asked if I choose the voice of my audiobooks. It's kind of like the same picture of Who Do I See in Hollywood. I've never listened to my audiobooks.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Well, I'm glad to hear they're good. I mean, I always like to get feedback because it's important and it's a big part of the storytelling business, if you will, publishing business. But just like I have a rock solid sense of what Harry looks like, I also know what he sounds like, and so I've never wanted to listen to my books and have that intruded on me.
Oh, he's wonderful.
I should mention that one time I did listen to about 20 minutes of one of them because at one point my publisher had this philosophy where we will do the unabridged with a journeyman reader who knows what he or she is doing, but we'll kick out an abridged version with a celebrity reader. And the book was Angel Slate. It was read by Burt Reynolds, and it happens to be a book I wrote with several black women in it. And people were coming to me at book signings saying, you got to hear Burt Reynolds do black women in your book. They said, if you're feeling down and you want something to laugh about, so I did, and it was a comedic effort. Unintentionally, but it was pretty funny.
The regular guy on the unabridged is fabulous, and the saxophone music that comes on periodically is just right.
All right, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Just right.
Yes.